All right, welcome back to Only Divergences. Good morning. Today is Monday, September 20th. It is 8:31 a.m. and markets are tanking. We've got the VIX rising, I think about 20%. We've got the S&P and all major indices. Futures are down just around 2% at this time. More importantly, lots of important trend lines have broken, and we're starting to see all stocks that I'm looking at on my list are down today. So we could be entering into a period of increased volatility, and I've been talking about that for some time. Go back and watch my video on the VIX where I warned that we're getting some signals here that the VIX could be ready to explode higher. But for today, what I want to do is I want to do just a quick little update on Apple. So go watch the previous video I did on Apple. I did point out, the title is 20% correction incoming. And, I published that around here. It's not so crazy anymore, the idea that Apple is going to go lower. And the reason why, I pointed this out already before. We had weekly bearish divergence. We have a high here. That was last year. And then we have a subsequent high here. That's lower, but price is higher. That's a negative divergence on the weekly. Now, it's not the cleanest negative divergence, but it's still there. And then you look at the daily and you have the same thing. You have a high here, and then you have a subsequent high that's lower in momentum, but price is higher. And so I call that nested divergence. It's when you have a divergence on one time frame, but then you also have it on another time frame. And generally what that means is that the divergence is very strong, and you can expect lower moves, basically, moves lower. Which means price is going to move lower. So we talked about that as being the more important context, right? And the only question that you have to ask yourself now, because Apple is opening a bit lower here. You can see pre-market's down 2%, so it's going to be coming down to somewhere around here. I'm only looking for one thing, right? As you all know, if you're viewers or your subscribers, I'm only looking for one thing, right? And that's bullish divergence. We don't have that right now. So you really don't, when it comes to Apple right now, you don't have to ask yourself any question other than, do I buy at the open? Right? That's the only question you want to ask yourself. I'm not talking for people who own the stock and want to know where it's going to go. This channel is for people who stay in cash most of the time, see opportunities at the open. I want to take them. So right now, Apple is down 2%. Let's talk about the potential possibilities that we can see today. So you can see here, this is the pre-market here. That's why I like Webull. It allows you to do this. But I'm going to turn the pre-market off just for a second. And I want to point out that if we're going to open at 143, we're going to be down here, right? So just a couple things. When you have that type of a gap in a move lower, sometimes you can get a snapback, right? Typically, you can get just a short covering rally here. Now, sometimes it'll fill the gap completely. Sometimes it'll go further than the gap. It'll bounce and continue higher. That usually happens in upward trends when we still have a trend intact. And you can see here that we don't have the trend intact. We're below all the moving averages. So, do you want to stand in front of a steamroller to catch some pennies as we get a little bit of a bounce here? I wouldn't. Then again, I also wouldn't be going short here, right? So what I'm looking here is if we open lower and we do kind of continue, I would expect a bit of a move lower here in the MACD, right? So we would be setting up for a new low, which would be the initial low. So I'm not thinking that this low that we're going to move here is going to be a divergent low, even though technically it is a divergent low. I want something more than that. So do I buy at the open, Apple? No, I don't. In fact, I'm not going to be buying anything at the open here, but longer term, when I say longer term, I mean towards the end of the week. Longer term, I'm going to be looking for some sort of a divergence here with momentum on the 60. And I think it's possible that, you're going to have to be really nimble and really fast, but I think that we could see Apple come lower, and then as it comes lower, we form some sort of a divergence and we bounce. But longer term, as I showed in that previous video of Apple that I made, this looks a little concerning. You have this momentum divergence. That's all that it boils down to. Look where we are on the moving averages, right? You have to ask yourself, do you see this stock doing this, going higher? Which it can. I mean, let's be honest, it can. Do you see it's moving sideways? Or do you see it coming back down, after this COVID pump, right? And for me, I see, let me just draw this out so that it's perfectly clear here. So you see this? See that support there? Well, that's what I'm looking at, right? So that seems to be a reasonable support level, right? So the stock kind of exploded after COVID, and it pulled back a little bit. I think this was an earnings time here, right? Yeah, this was the summer earnings, so Q2 earnings. Exploded higher, and then this has basically been support. Now, this isn't horizontal support, this is ascending support, and that's why I like it. I like ascending supports because I find that they work. So we have ascending support, so what does that tell me? Are there going to be bounces along the way? Absolutely. But I think that it would be reasonable to make an assumption that before we can resume the uptrend, if we do, right? We're talking about like a best case scenario. Before we can resume the uptrend, we need to at least come down to this level here. That's where Apple can get some footing. Now, what concerns me is that given this longer term bearish divergence, what if we break this level, right? So, if we break this level, there's going to be opportunities, obviously, but I think that if we do come down to this level, especially if we come pretty quickly, like we did here, or if we form divergences, like we did here and here, on the lower levels, obviously, then we could have some opportunity. I don't want to see Apple come down. I just want to see some good potential for some trades. So this week there could be some potential if Apple continues lower and forms divergence, maybe around here, because this was again, I don't like horizontal support, but this was horizontal support. And then we also have the 100-day moving average here, so this area around 41 could be good. But remember, when a stock market falls, it cuts through things like a hot knife through butter, and it's possible that we could see some bigger moves lower. So this line here is really what I'm looking at in terms of a longer term support. If you're a holder of Apple, this clearly isn't the best news because you don't want to go all the way down to $1.30 to get support. Although I think that is where we might be heading before we can get our footing and really break away, right? So that's my base case. There's really no action to be taken today on Apple, and as I said in my Coinbase video last night, usually on Mondays, unless things are really clear and obvious to me, I just like to stand back and just take a look and see what's happening in the markets, because things have been quiet over the weekends. Markets are closed on weekends, and you want to see how the market reacts and get a feel for the waves, so to speak, before you jump in and start surfing, right? So no action to be taken today, but there could be some potential this week for bullish divergences or just any sort of positive divergences. And I'll do an update at the aftermarket closes today with regards to what happened, if there would be any potential tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. I really appreciate that when you subscribe. Yeah, I'll see you later tonight. Take care.